Hey everyone, this is Tammy from Your Naked Journey. Hope you're having a wonderful morning. It is 8:46 a.m. and 6 degrees in Jacksonville, Florida. So kind of sucking already because it's not over 20 degrees. However, I wanted just to touch base on something. This is not a political post. This is not a feminist ranting. This isn't any of those things that you're going to automatically think about when we kind of approach this subject. But there have been a couple social media posts that I've read just this morning alone that kind of talk about kind of like men in power and women in a weaker role. So let me just read this to you. It says, when a man truly loves a woman, she becomes his weakness. When a woman truly loves a man, he becomes her strength. This is called an exchange of power. So the post presupposes certain things, i.e. the man has the power and the woman has weakness. Now, I would have told you 20 years ago that would just like piss me off, like how dare you, freaking say that. However, another post that I read earlier today talked about how a man has to suffer through these concepts of being alone and carrying the world on his shoulders. He's got to take care of his family, he's got to take care of his wife, he's got to, take care of people in his career. And who does he, depend on? Who does he kind of rely on? Which is an interesting conundrum in and of itself, because I was a primary breadwinner in my family. I have 3 beautiful children. I was married, but I had the career. I was the career woman. I made the money. I climbed the corporate ladder. I had to take care of my family financially. I had to take care of my family emotionally. I was the primary caregiver of my children, as well as the primary, breadwinner in my family. Obviously I was married. My husband was there. There was just a lot of lack of a contribution on a lot of reasons, a lot of ways for a lot of reasons we don't need to get into right now. And I was the CEO of a local nonprofit foster care agency, and I had hundreds of staff that were relying on me, and I had thousands of children and families, that depended on me. So my statement back on this Facebook post was, I don't read this as a man issue versus a woman issue. I read this as kind of like a leadership issue, So I find it interesting that we have this concept of man and woman. Now, I completely 100% agree with the man's movement, believe me, because I'm a big part of the women's movement and, any movement that has to do with, celebrating the differences in race or ethnicity or gender or sexual orientation. And I think that men have unique experiences, that they have to deal with and challenge. And I think we have to respect men and being that warrior. I'm not all for that bad masculinity. I think there's toxic masculinity, but I think there's a shitload of toxic femininity. Believe me, I'm all about that too. So I think it's interesting. I wonder if, part of the conversation, not that conversation, because you're right. Men, women, very different experiences, very different concepts of being a person and what that means and how you're raised, your expectations and the messaging you get from society and kind of how you're wired. So we're going to get past all of that. But I wonder if some of the challenges that we can kind of talk about as adults, we can talk about more in terms of masculinity versus femininity. We all have both. Women have both traits, masculine traits, feminine traits. Men have both masculine traits and feminine traits. And there are positives and negatives to both of those traits. I've always said I see myself much more in a masculine light. Just the way that I present myself, a lot of my thoughts kind of define me more, leaning towards masculine personality types. That doesn't mean that I don't try to balance that with the positive femininity traits. Now, I would have told you freaking 30 years ago, I want to say how old I am, so 35 years ago, I wanted to be nothing like my mother. I saw my mother as being the quintessential, like feminine. Like I'm home, I'm dependent on somebody else, I take care of the children, I do nothing for myself, everything is about other people, and I'm not freaking doing that shit. And I always identified more with my father, who was more of what you consider the typical, masculine type, where he worked, he took care of business, he was no nonsense, he wasn't engaged with us emotionally as much as, obviously we all desired as children, but we kind of understood what his role is. And so I think as we continue as a society to grow and to evolve and cross these lines, I think people mistake women like me or women like you, that we're crossing over into man's territory, that we're somehow, who we are and what we do and how we define ourselves is somehow blurring the lines of traditional gender roles. I don't see it that way at all. I'm not a man. I have no freaking desire to be a man. Believe me, I have no desire to be a man. And it's funny, I used to. Like, a long time ago, when I was young, growing up, it was like, God, my life would be so much easier if I was a boy. That was just, I was a product of the 70s, and women were just being empowered enough to do the things that they wanted to do, and we were getting the messaging that you could be anything that you wanted to be. But it was hard, so you think maybe a lot easier if I was like a white guy, white male, because you got it easier. I don't give a fuck your politics. I don't care what you think. I don't care. It's a fact. You have it easier. Period. Now you also have it tougher, because with every benefit comes consequences. There are, issues with it. But I don't see the things that I do or how I am or how I defend myself blurring any gender lines. I see that I'm becoming more evolved and balancing between those masculine traits and those feminine traits. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Isn't that self-actualization? Isn't that, improvement of the species? So it's interesting. It's a thought for you to begin to think about when you're looking at these posts or when you're talking to people and they talk about men's roles and women's roles, and I completely believe that we each have our own role and they're very important in this world. And just because I'm a strong woman doesn't mean that I don't need a strong man. Just because I am in control of my life doesn't mean that there are areas in my life that I need to be more submissive. It doesn't mean that because I can financially take care of myself doesn't mean I shouldn't be vulnerable and trust somebody else. You know what I'm saying? This is the true balance. This is the true, how we identify and define ourselves. So it was a thought. It came up a couple of times today. And in my journey of living my exceptional life, I'm learning how to kind of balance those two very important traits in my life. How to be who I am, be a powerful woman, be a badass, and yet remain a woman, and yet have those feminine traits that make femininity such a valuable commodity. But we cannot continue to define masculinity and manhood as strength and femininity as weakness. That's not, those definitions are archaic, antiquated, and for both parties, they're very hurtful and limiting. So, you might want to look at that as one of your dragons that you need to slay. Have a great one. Bye.